Hey, g'day everyone. As you can see, I've cut a big hole in the first plank, small hole on the other side. I was initially just going to putty this area, but I said I'm in an iron about whether to replace it or do something else. But yeah, there was pieces broken off on both sides, like breaking outside where the screw line is, and there was also a second break in this one, right down here. And I was originally going to putty it, and the pieces, when I changed the keel timber, the pieces that were cracked broke off on both sides, and I put them aside, and I was going to glue them back in and then glue the other things. But what happened is that, yeah, when I cleaned up and swept up, I swept up all the wood shavings and everything that were on the floor here, and I used them to start the fire when I steamed the keel. And unfortunately, the pieces that I had put aside got swept up and burnt in the fire. So, for one, that meant there would have been a huge, like, inch-wide putty area. And for one, I haven't got that much putty to start with. Like I was going to mix up a epoxy resin and sawdust putty. So that's one area, and like it turns out I'm going to have to buy more epoxy resin anyway, so I'm going to run short anyway. But the other factor that you've got to take into account here, and you can't, like being a boat, if a boat springs a major leak and sinks, people can drown, so you got to ensure that it's not going to fail in a major way. So whenever you're puttying areas, you got to take into account whether it's a solid area, whether it's an area that will flex. So your putty won't flex. It's solid, and like you can get away with doing little splits like that, that you can get away with. But if you got something that's an inch wide in an area that flexes, see, the putty won't flex. And what will happen is the timber, you won't break the putty, but the timber will split away from the puttied area if there's not enough flex in it. So that's it. So for that reason, I've decided to cut those pieces out entirely. They didn't need to be that wide. The issue was I wanted to cut them at 45, and you can't just cut them with a wood saw, or like I initially set up the jigsaw, and I thought, well, how am I going to get past the ribs, The jigsaw's not going to get past the ribs. I'd have to drill a hole either side of the ribs, start, stop, and this cut along here would have ended up being all over the place. It wouldn't have made straight and smooth, which would have made it really hard to patch it neatly. So for that reason, I've gone with the router. I've got a 45 bit on the router. I couldn't actually just buy a 45 bit. The only one I could get that was actually big enough. It had a roll bearing wheel on top, which I've had to cut off with the angle grinder. It's for doing edges. It's an edge guide, the roll bearing. Anyway, but yeah, and then you need a guide. You have to run your router along something. You can't just hold the router and go along and get a straight edge. It won't happen. You have to have it resting against something that's straight to get a straight edge. And as I said, I only really needed to cut out 2 inches of the timber, but I've cut out this much because that's where the router sits against the other timber. This edge is a guide. with a router. So that's how they ended up being that big. So I've planed up my last bit of Huon pine down to 12 mil, which is the thickness of this timber. I've now got to put an edge on it, and yeah, I've made a bit of a boo-boo in that I didn't check the length of this piece of wood. As I said, if I'd have been able to just do a 2-inch thing, I could have got used half of the board, for one and half of the other, but because they're so wide, and what I did was I just cut it to where the major split was without taking into account the length of the timber that I have to patch it with. And the problem I've got now, by the time I get 45s and everything, I'm going to be 2 inches short. So we go on the smaller one. I'm going to have to actually cut pieces out of the pieces I cut out. And yeah, so it's not going to be as neat as I would like it, but I don't really have any other option at the moment. I don't have any more Huon pine, and so I'm just going to have to make do. Anyway, we'll get by, it'll be fine. As I said, the epoxy sticks timber really well, and yeah, once it's cleaned up, sanded, painted, it won't be noticeable, and as I said, it's not going to break either. So, but yeah, would have preferred to not have to put a 2-inch piece at one end. But anyway, that's the way it goes sometimes. So yeah, I've now got to pack up the planer and blow all the dust out of this now, and yeah, it's getting pretty blunt. I was really struggling to cut this last piece of timber. I think, yeah, doing that keel timber, because that was a very old piece of hardwood, and yeah, that's taken the final edge off the blades of the planer, and I don't actually need to use it any further, but I might attempt to sharpen the blades anyway, just out of principle. You borrow something like, even though it was used for the owner's boat, the owner of the planer, you still don't, you try to return things in the same condition that you borrowed them. So yeah, I might have a go at sharpening the blades myself before I take it back. Anyway, as I said, I've got to clean this up now, and then I've got to set up now, clamp this piece of timber down with some sort of another piece of timber or steel or something on top of it to use as a guide, so I can 45 this edge and get it all nice and straight and uniform, and we'll go from there. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.